Okay, we are live. So, let me know, Mike, when you see yourself come up on the screen. But yeah, guys who are going to be joining us soon, as you know, it takes a couple of minutes for me to get this out on social media because we are live and that's how it works when we do these things. So I hope you're all well. But yeah, we're with Scar. So Scar, how are you since we last talked?
Hey, Mike, how you doing?
Okay, we are live. So, let me know, Mike, when you see yourself come up on the screen. But yeah, guys who are going to be joining us soon, as you know, it takes a couple of minutes. Have you managed to click that pause button? Because we are live, and that's how it works when we do these things. So I hope you're all well. But Mike, have you pressed the pause button on the link that you're looking at? Scar, how are you since we last talked?
Hey, Mike, how you doing?
Okay, we are live.
Okay, so Mike, you got me okay now?
Let me know. Yeah, so the link I sent you, you have to pause that video that you can see the box in because there's a bit of delay.
Okay,
The YouTube video link I sent you where you see the questions coming in.
Oh, okay, yeah. I see. Welcome. I don't see a pause on there.
Just on the YouTube video, like the normal where you see the thing, and you can press play or pause because I was just hearing the echo. That's all. Joining the suit.
Yeah, that's the thing. If I hit play, I hear the 10-second or so ago.
Yes, so you just pause it, keep it paused so you don't hear yourself echoing, if you see what I mean. So that's all you need to know because it doesn't pause the video; it just kind of pauses the sound.
Okay, hang on, because I was pausing the video like you normally would when you watch a video on YouTube, and it pauses it altogether.
Yeah, so I think we're good now. I think like whatever you've done, if you pause that video, like we got no echo now, so we can start again. Though we are a minute early.
So I won't actually see myself live. I just see the pause
picture. Yeah, you just see the pause. Yeah, and you see the questions.
Okay, so then we are paused, and I hear you. And I haven't been doing a whole lot, Mike. Just trying to stay warm here in the southern USA. It gets a little cold even down here, but we're doing fine. The sun's out today, so we're very happy to be with you here in YouTube land.
Well, it's great to have you. But yeah, while the people get the questions coming in, and thanks for people for joining us tonight, morning, afternoon, wherever you are. Can you give us a bit of background about your flying career before we get stuck in?
Sure. I was smart enough to join the U.S. Navy in 1984, and I ended up staying for 30 years. And I did go in with the idea of flying because I wanted to fly. My brother went in before me, and he's flying, and my dad flew, and his brother flew. So it was kind of a logical objective of mine to fly. And both my brother and I wanted the F-14 because we thought that was the coolest fighter of all times, and fortunately for both of us, we ended up getting it. So I did fly the F-14 for, let me see, from like I got my wings in 85, so right after that we went to the F-14, and I flew that until I had a transition out of the F-14 for its retirement in the early 2000s. It was about 2003 that we transitioned into the Super Hornet, and so I finished my flying career in the Super Hornet. I ended up with almost 3,000 hours in the Tomcat and all the variations A, B, and D. And then I finished in the Super Hornet. I only got probably 600 or 700 hours in the Super Hornet before I retired. My command tour was my last flying job, and then I retired. And I had a couple other jobs in the Navy. I was a base CO and then a ROTC at a university CO, and that was a kind of a neat way to finish because some of the folks that I made officers are still in. In fact, one just left Top Gun. He was a Top Gun qualified guy, and he was an instructor, and he's back in the fleet right now. So that's I retired almost 8 years ago, and now I'm just enjoying life with my wife and following the antics of the rest of my family, my kids, and my brother in his movies. I help him make his aircrew movies and do these kinds of things, and just enjoy life in general.
Well, sounds great, Scar. But yeah, while we're on that, because I didn't ask you on the original interview, where did your call sign Scar come from?
All right. Well, you get your call sign in the Navy in a variety of manners. Some are kind of just variations of your name. Or like if you have a very Italian name, they might call you, salami or noodle, something to do with Italians. Or in my case, it was our last name's Vizcarra, and the scar in the middle there they thought sounded cool, and they made it Scar. And honestly, I didn't pick it. Your call sign is rarely picked by the individual. It's usually picked for you, and a lot of times some of your squadron mates try to kind of dig at you, and I've seen some pretty funny call signs, none that I would want to have, but I was fortunate to get one that is basically a kind of a derivative of our name, Scar, and it's really one syllable, so it's easy to hear on the radios, and it goes well on your patches.
Exactly, that's almost British or RAF, like where they just stick a Y or the S on the end.
Yeah, exactly.
But as you can see on the side there, Scar, we've got some questions coming in, so I'm going to let you start. But guys, get your questions coming in if you're just joining us now, but enjoy.
Okay, well, thanks, Mike. The first one I see here is a hell of a call sign on its own. Lima Romeo Papa Foxtrot 52. He's asking which of the two had more time on station and which had better user interface for the WSO working Lantern or AT FLIR between the F-14D and the Super Hornet? And that's a great question. I can speak, obviously, I ran both systems. I had a heck of a lot more time in with the Lantern pod in the F-14 because I did multiple deployments with that. The AT FLIR, I only got to do a little bit because, again, I had minimal time with it. It was a very sophisticated piece of gear. I enjoyed it. I'd say the user interface was probably slightly better with the AT FLIR over the Lantern, because if you recall, the Lantern was not designed for the F-14. It was sort of an aftermarket purchase by the Navy. It was an Air Force. It was used on F-16s and a couple other platform and F-15s, and it fit for the Navy, so they bought it and they made it work. They kind of forced the integration, and it actually was quite good. It was not bad at all. But I would just think that there's a little bit more planning in the architecture of the AT FLIR implementation than the Lantern, which was sort of slapped on. Again, both of them were actually pretty easy to use, and it was pretty intuitive, basically, I found. And so that's a great question. Let's see. Do you think the loss of the F-35C recently is overhyped? How much of a threat if it fell in the Chinese hands? Well, I'll tell you what, it's cause for concern, obviously, because those are super, super expensive aircraft. And I mean, in the old days, in the 50s and the 60s, even if you account for the inflation, the time value of money, these things are still way, way more expensive than even 10 fighter jets back in the 50s or 60s, where you could sort of account for the attrition. So when you see the loss of a plane that's over $100 million, it's concerning. And the other thing that is concerning, and I can't speculate on what is the cause of that, whether pilot error or was there other issues involved. I'm not even going to conjecture, but it's just I will say that over the course of time with technology, that the systems that are on the airplane aiding pilots to fly on the aircraft carrier, which in and of itself is a very difficult thing to do. They have gotten better and better as far as implementing technology to assist the pilot to get on board the aircraft carrier safely. So I was kind of surprised to see, already an F-35 with a ram strike. But again, I can't say, well, this is somebody's fault. We don't know. Obviously, when something goes wrong, something has to be blamed, and they're going to do an investigation. The second part of that question is how much of a threat if it fell into Chinese hands? Well, the Chinese are very, very good at reverse engineering American-made products. So it would probably be a really bad thing for them to get that. And I'm sure that our country is doing the utmost to make sure that we can get that back in our hands. There'll be a whole process involved with the accident investigation or mishap boards. I sat on those before. They do a very good, thorough job. And I don't know, when that'll come out. It's usually several months before the public would know. We don't know exactly what happened yet, so I can't speculate. But it's a pretty big deal to see. Luckily nobody was killed, because obviously I've lost friends behind the boat, and it's a really bad situation when you do. So luckily nobody was lost, and we've got a lot of money. We could buy more airplanes. We just can't. You can't replace human beings as easily, so we don't want to do that. From Thomas Aldridge, what was the craziest experience you got away with, and what did you learn from it? Well, I'll tell you, it's not even all that crazy, but it was high risk when the Tomcats started having problems with hydraulics. The first response is land as soon as practicable early on, because you had backed up hydraulic systems. So you usually like to get the plane back to the home base so your maintainers wouldn't have to drive an hour away or wherever you went and landed anyway. But at one point, a Tomcat accidentally crashed into short when it was coming back with a hydraulic emergency. So they changed the procedures. This is back in the 80s, and they said land as soon as possible, not as practicable, but as soon as possible. So that meant, like, if there's a near airfield, you got to land there. Well, there were a couple times where, we probably made the call to go back to our home base in an effort to help our maintenance brethren out, and not to say we violated the rules, because on another occasion we did land as soon as we possibly could. But a lot of times you have to make the call as to what the true nature of your aircraft problem is, and a lot of that has to do with gas as well. Sometimes you don't want to be embarrassed and land short of your home field because you ran out of the gas. Now, but what would be worse would be running out of gas and crashing, right? So those would probably be the craziest or stupidest things I've done, is where, like, you kind of roll we're pretty sure that we will have enough gas to get there, but the prudent mind would have been land an hour, away, land short before you get to your home base, and that would probably be the stupidest thing that we did, was say, now we don't want to embarrass our squadron. We're going to go all the way back to our base and land with fumes. So, Ian Saxon, hey Scar, Mike, good evening. What treasured mementos do you have from your squadron days? Well, everybody keeps their patches, I'd say, first and foremost. I have several helmets. Now, these are not anything like the new. When I left the Navy, we were getting the joint helmets. You've seen those, and they're hundreds of thousands of dollars. Needless to say, I don't have one of those. I do have the old classic helmet that I have a number of them. I've got all my flight gear, G suit, vest, all that stuff. Name tags that you wear with your khakis, all my uniforms, essentially. I'd say the one thing that may not be as common was one aircraft, F-14, crashed. And it was the only Tomcat in the history of the Tomcat to land gear up. And it happened at Fentress Field in Virginia Beach in the 2001 time frame. And because I was waiting to go to my commands, I was what they call a PXO, a prospective XO. I was going to go to the squadron and be an XO. I'm kind of sitting around waiting, and this accident happened. So sure enough, I got nabbed to be the president of the mishap board, and you oversee the mishap. Well, when we went there, of course, they're cleaning up, and there was a piece of metal from the aircraft. Not huge, something that would fit in my hand, and they didn't need it or want it, so I kept it. So I have a piece of a Tomcat that came from that crash, piece of Grumman metal that I thought, this will be kind of cool. So I kept that. Let's see, how much from the freckle puny. How much easier, if at all, was the Hornet to land on a carrier than a Tomcat? Well, again, I have landed in the simulator, both aircraft, but I had never landed the actual Tomcat as a RIO. I helped several pilots land for the first time, obviously at night, which is a daunting task. I took numerous what we called Category 1 pilots who've never landed on the aircraft carrier in the Tomcat at night or day at night. And that's the first time they ever land on the carrier at night. So having had that experience in the course of flying both aircraft, I will say that it's significantly easier to land the Hornet because the engine response time is much quicker. And again, it's kind of hard to differentiate between the F-14A was much more difficult to land than the F-14D because the HUD was better in the F-14D. But I'd say overall the Hornet was much easier because it had, and the Tomcat, before they even had digital flight controls, made it really hard to land. I mean, it was, again, more like the old Vietnam days. So I would say it was quite a bit easier in the Hornet, and the biggest way you would know that is if you go through the various ready rooms, you look on the walls when you walk in. There's the grade sheets or grade, if you want, they call them greenie boards of all the pilots and their landings. Well, if they're green, that's the good grades you want. Those are okay. The Hornets always had lots of green because even their junior guys would get a lot of green good okay passes, which is the best one, and that tells you how much easier it was basically. Let's see, Muaz Osman, the Turkey was known to be a hangar queen, but how rugged was the airframe given the government reputation for making tougher aircraft? That is absolutely true. I've seen some really damaged, beat up planes. I remember a 1v1. I wasn't on it, but I remember seeing pictures of 1v1 where they actually collided, and one guy actually was able to fly back with only part of a wing, and it flew. So yeah, they were very, very rugged aircraft. There were a lot of little black boxes and a lot in the avionics that would tend to be problematic. That got to be a little bit more of the issue with the maintenance of the aircraft, but the actual physical skin of the airplane, man, it was a tough bird. Some of it was composite; it wasn't all metal. The horizontal stabs in the back, and I remember occasionally you'll have some of your maintenance guys back towing an airplane. Maybe they backed it into something, and it'd have to be repaired. Obviously, it's not like unpenetrable. So, but it was a very rugged aircraft, and you've probably seen the tests where they dropped the air in the testing. They dropped the Tomcat from a considerable height, probably 10, 12 feet or more, and just drop it. And man, it takes it. And I've had some pretty rough landings too, especially on the aircraft carriers. So it is a very rugged machine. Puke and George, did the Navy make the same mistake like in the 60s when the F-111 was forced on them? Now it has the same with the F-35. Was there a better way? Well, that's a good question, and like they said, those who don't remember the past are doomed to repeat it. Now, I would say it's a slightly different situation between the F-111 and the F-35, only because I don't know that our engineers, our aerodynamic folks had the know-how to make a one-size-fits-all carrier-based Air Force Marine VSTOL type. The F-111 was never VSTOL, but the F-111 was designed both to be an Air Force asset as well as the Navy fighter, just like the F-4 was. And it was somewhat being forced on the Navy. Navy said, no, it's not it's not very carrier suitable. And truth be told, it wasn't the greatest fighter in the world, even though it was called the F-111. It was more of a bomber than a fighter. I don't know that it's the same case with the 35, but it is a more economically efficient way. And when you are talking about the amounts of money that these airplanes cost nowadays, again, it's not like it was back in the old days, even adjusted for inflation. The planes are much, much more money. So I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to try to have a one type of aircraft that they can all do. And this is probably a good test. They're not exactly the same. The Navy variant is slightly bigger wing area to help for the low approaches on the aircraft carrier. So they're not exactly the same, but there's enough commonality to get economies of scale. So I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, and I think it's too early to say whether or not it's a failure. So I don't know that there is a better way, especially financially the way we are today. Let's see. Vic Ciani, if the F-14 had a TFR capability like the F-15E, how would the low-level ride feel? Better than aircraft at low level, TFR being the terrain following. We actually did a lot of low levels in the Tomcat, and in any airplane, doesn't matter if it's a Tomcat or what bird. If you're down low, you're going to get a little bit beat up because of it's a lot of jumping going on down there. I wouldn't necessarily want to do the low level flight for a couple of reasons. Obviously, the mountains, they have if you hit a mountain, you're not going to survive. Your terrain following, the technology, it'd probably be there, but what would be the benefit? I would rather use variable or stealth technology, to hide at altitude, for gas considerations, speed, all that stuff. Not to mention, when you're down low, a lot of planes have been taken down with small arms, and they can't get you up high, and which is why I'm always a proponent of being high when egressing from a target. From Shiny Baldy, the number of leaks coming off the ship, I'm assuming he's talking about the Vincent, and not shutting off crew cell phone access to upload videos at home is the same. You're right, it is, and you can't fight that. Having seen the Navy when I joined it was like it was in the 60s, or even World War II for that matter. You got mail when it was delivered via, onboard carrier delivery aircraft. It was landed and had mail. You might get mail once a month. You might get it twice a week, but you're not going to get it as often. When in the 90s, they installed the capability for the average guy, sailor on the ship to access email. It changed everything. And my last cruise was in 2002. And again, I had a telephone in my, now by then I'm the commanding officer, so I had a lot of extra benefits. I had a telephone in my room. I had a secret internet in my room. I had all that stuff. But now with cell phone, everybody's got a cell phone, and the connectivity is better. It's going to be very, very difficult to stop leaks. And as evidence, I mean, this accident just happened, like you said, and within a few days, you saw that color cell phone video of a guy who probably should have been down in the fantail, and you saw the part of the crash. You could ascertain that it was a ramp strike from that. Then just recently saw the plat footage, which was somebody filming it with their phone on the display. And I'm sure those guys are going to get hammered if they even get caught. But like you said, it's very difficult to manage that kind of thing when everybody, it's harder to get away. Not that everybody should be trying to get away with something, but in today's day and age, it is harder to get away with anything with the number of phones and cameras that are around. So it's good to let the system try to work itself through again with the mishap investigation board, which is, I'm sure, already started on that. And then I tell you one good thing about these uploads and videos is it's a way to keep the upper level chain honest, because in the old day they could only release the information, or they would only release what they wanted to release. And I hate to say it, but the upper echelon of the military has gotten as political as the Congress has. I mean, almost. This debacle with the Afghanistan retreat, that's I have serious concerns with some of these calls leadership's making, but this kind of thing, it's almost like a whistleblower. I mean, it's hard when that information is out there. It helps keep them a little bit more transparent. So there's some good things about it and some not so good things about it. Let's see, Timberwolf, that's a cool call sign. UFOs are being investigated by U.S. Congress. What are your views on the Tic Tac sighting by Lieutenant Commander Fravor? And have you or other pilots seen or been vectored to anything strange? I haven't seen. I've seen a few videos, and honestly I haven't really delved into that topic all that much. I personally have never seen anything that couldn't be explained airborne, and I've never been vectored or chased at anything. I'm not saying you always say never, right? I just haven't had a whole lot of interest in it, and I haven't seen any, and again, I've never been vectored on one, and I'm not going to say whether or not I believe or don't believe it. I mean, if one day the world is taken over by aliens, then I would be pretty shocked. But I haven't personally been vectored or seen or heard of one. The Freckle Puny. One last flight ever: Phantom, Tomcat, or Hornet? Ooh, that's a good one. I never got to fly the Phantom. I fought against Phantoms. That would be kind of neat, because it's just something I've not flown. I've got to ride in almost every other Navy airplane, S3, A6, E2, all those, and of course the Tomcat and the Hornet. Honestly, if it was my last flight ever, I'd probably do it in the Tomcat again, just because that was my favorite. Bugler 75. Hi, hope everyone's doing well. Me too. David Smith, again, as a RIO WSO, what's your favorite air-to-ground mission? Bombing, FAC, TARPs, recon, SEED? Does it change based on the jet? Yes. F-14 versus F-18. Yeah. A lot of missions. Honestly, my favorite one is the air-to-ground bombing, just because, man, you're going to see the effects. You're out there, especially if it's real world. You're bombing a real target, because you're direct action. I never felt as gratified in my entire Navy career as when we flew missions in Afghanistan, and we were dropping bombs on everything from surface to air, guns, troops, aircraft, helicopters, buildings. And I mean, you're in there and you're moving targets. That's a real challenge when you see tanks that are actually, they're not going super fast, but they're moving, and as well as convoys, they're moving, and you're bombing them, and your bombs falling on them as they're moving, and it makes for interesting, exciting missions. FAC, I did some FAC, but I was not a forward air controller. I wasn't qualified. You had to have a lot of specific training for that mission, and I was never a FAC qualified. Again, I assisted in it, and it's interesting. You're assisting the close air support essentially, and it was decent. Again, I wasn't a qualified guy. Tarps it is what it is. You're going to fly the plane where you're supposed to. You plot your track around it, and you basically in the back you throw a switch, and you see the click click click, and the airplane is taking pictures. It's not super exciting. It's kind of fun because you get no real time feedback in the plane as to what you're seeing. So when you come back to the ship and they offload the old film, the old school film, and then they finally get it developed, and then they show it to you. That's kind of gratifying, but it's dragged out over the course of several hours, and it's not that exciting. Suppression of enemy air defense. At the most the Tomcat would be flying cap on an EA-6B whose primary mission is SEAD. So again, short answer, bombing. That'd be my favorite. I love the air-to-air mission and bombing, and the best of both worlds is to fly into a situation where you have to shoot somebody down to get to your bombing site, and then drop your bomb, and then either fight your way out or just get your lighter burners and get out of town. It would change based on your mission. I enjoyed, and I did again most of my time in the Tomcat. So I did a deployment in the F-18, but it was your kind of routine standard deployment in 7th Fleet. It wasn't to a war zone or anything. So I never got to employ the Super Hornet in a wartime environment. See, the Freckle Puny, Super Hornet Block 3, or Super Tomcat 21, which would the latter be superior? If so, by how much? Honestly, I couldn't tell you because I don't know. I mean, I've seen pictures of Tomcat 21. I think that I could probably safely say that the things that the Tomcat did better than the Hornet, and there were few things that it could do better than the Hornet, would probably still be better in the Tomcat 21 over the Block 3 Super Hornet. But there's only so much you can do to an old platform that had evolved over the course of several decades, as compared to, say, the Super Hornet, which is multi-function integration, where that's almost the opposite of what was in the Tomcat. But who knows? I don't know that much about the Tomcat 21. Maybe they would have basically gutted the thing and put in a whole new multi-function integration in that. I don't know. I could tell you that the Tomcat 21 looked better. Let's see. YouTuber loved watching Tomcat Tales. What over great projects are to come from Speed and Angels Productions? That's cool. Never get tired of listening to good sea stories. If you had a chance to see, my brother just finished up probably a month and a half ago, Legends of Carrier Naval Aviation. And it's a great one that he was tasked to do, because a lot of our aging aviators from World War II, they're not going to be around that much longer. And so my brother interviewed several of those great guys, some Korean War guys, and Vietnam. Even our Vietnam vets are getting in their 80s. So that's one that I can hardly recommend. If you go up to Tailhook Association, they have a link on that you can look. And there's talk of making a Tomcat Tales 2. And nobody's ruling it out. It's my brother. He's the writer, producer, and I just help him out with that. And I would be fully supportive of making a Tomcat too, because there's so much stuff that he didn't even get to use, because he's trying to he couldn't have a 5-hour documentary, so he's trying to keep it to an hour and a half. But there's so much good stuff, and there's so many folks out there that we know have great stories that they should be told. So I would be on the lookout for that. There might be an additional Legends of Carrier Aviation next year. We'll see. Let's see. Do you think the S3 was perhaps retired too soon, given that the pivot back to near peer blue water Navy competition sure seems like ASW and the standoff ASM mission would be useful? I don't disagree with that at all, to be honest. When I saw the S3, because that was the go-to tanker for my last several years in the Navy. And it was primed for that mission. Very efficient in the air, and it could carry a lot of gas. The only thing I could say is that the dawn of the new age is, I think, trying to make the commonality of all the aircraft on the flight deck a driver as far as financially, spare parts, because ultimately that's what gets you is your maintenance, your sortie completion rate based on your maintenance issues. And if you have 10 different flavors of aircraft with different streams for supply, because different parts go on different airplanes, it'd be a lot easier to conduct maintenance if every airplane on the flight deck is a Hornet, except for the E2, of course. But your Growlers and your various fighters, there's going to be some economies of scale there. So I think I was sorry to see the S3 go, and ASW. You're right. Who's doing that? Obviously there's other assets in the fleet, but not much in the way of carrier aviation. So the Freckle Puny again, what do you think of the rapid progress the Chinese are making in naval aviation? Do you think they could match the USN? Well, again, I'm never going to say never. But right now I'm not as concerned. The assessments were that, and this is in the last 15 years, that they were still years, even maybe a decade, a couple decades behind us. We tend to put our enemies' capability sometimes on a pedestal, which is, it's smarter than underrating them, right? I'd rather overrate our enemy and come out a winner every time than underrate and then get shocked. So I think you're going to find that where they do progress in terms of technology, and a lot of that is reverse engineering. Like Baron von Richthofen said, the box matters very little. Okay, what matters is the man in the box. So even if the Chinese had the greatest F-22 and F-23 and they flew the exact same, I still think we would have an edge based on our style of command and control, our training. Again, it's the quality of the box matters little. So I think they are catching up, though, in terms of what they saw how well we were doing with our blue water ops, and they want to emulate that. So they're trying to make aircraft like ours. They're trying to make aircraft carriers like ours, and they do, and they come close. But I think they look closer than they really are to where we are. Not to say they can't get there, in the future, but I still think we're still years and years ahead. Again, that's not to say we could take it easy and cut military funding. I mean, we got to keep our edge. Tracy SW100. Hey, Scar from a former BK, Black Knight, AQ. Hey, good to see you, Tracy. Hey, I'm still in touch with quite a few of our squadron mates, and that's what I love about the social media and the Facebook, is you'll catch up with all these guys. Good to hear from you. YouTuber, yep, watched it. Abgeek Joe, can you please have Toro and a Tomcat Tails too, please? I'm a huge Toro fan, so much I have her. Oh, I think I have her Iraqi Freedom 213 Black Lions jet. I don't know Toro personally, but I believe that Mike at the Aircrew interview has an interview with her, and I think I've seen that before. So believe me, there are so many great Tomcat stories out there. So yeah, we'd have to look her up. Timberwolf, have you any tales of hairy moments while in flight combat or training? Both. Also, could you talk a little bit more about a generally great red flag moment or interesting tale? Well, I'd say that the most exciting and memorable experiences that I had were in combat. And while you're actually flying your combat missions, you're really focused on the mission itself. But had several very interesting missions. Seeing somebody shoot at us from the ground through our sensors, so real time, I'm seeing, hey, these guys are shooting at us. And believe it or not, at the time we were the only airplane. Our wingman had hydraulic flares, so we're the only airplane in this area, part of the sky in Afghanistan. We're flying over, we could see this thing shooting at us, and we rolled around and bombed it. But that kind of thing, you could train all day, and training is fun. But when you're out there and you're like, man, somebody is really shooting at me, and you're several hundreds of miles from the ship. It's interesting. Gas is a whole nother exciting and very sort of tiring, fatiguing way. Is you always have to worry about your gas, especially in country. When my very first mission in country, the Air Force tanker had an engine fire, went down. So now we were out in the middle of nowhere and had no gas. So we had to divert into Pakistan, which was a first for that war. And it was only a few days into the war, and that was a whole nother interesting story. One that I rather not repeat the experience or the story. Let's see. Matt, I might be butchering this name. Waz Osman. What was the doctrine that required F-14 RIO to launch the Phoenix instead of the pilot? Well, typically that was I would say more often than not, it was the RIO launching it, because he would be running the radar. And that's the thing about the Tomcat, was there's so many things that the RIO could only do in the back seat, as obviously there was only so many things that the pilot could do in the front seat. And so the RIO would be building the picture, via the OG9 or the APG-71 and the D. And, usually we would try to shoot, if we could, and track while scan and take advantage of our multi-shot capability. So those would typically be taken by the RIO. Didn't have to be. My own brother, he shot a Phoenix. Now that was a test, in a test shot. But most of the times in our squadrons that I was in, it was typically the F-14 RIO launching the Phoenix, and then typically the pilot would be the Sparrow, the closer in weapons. Clearly, the Sidewinder, the RIO can't launch the Sidewinder or shoot the gun, so those would be shot by. You'll hear some RIO say, "Oh, we could shoot the gun by." The circuit breaker nonsense, but anyway, tactically, the pilot would be shooting both the Sidewinder and the gun. So let's see, the Freckle Puny. Whilst we can agree that cost is a real factor, if cash was less of an issue, would a modern USN carrier be better saved by more single roll types such as A6, E6s, F-14s, interceptors? Yes, and I would say I'm sort of neutral on the answer on this one, because back in the day, those missions were exclusive to each of those type of aircraft. A6s were bombers, F-14s were fighters, F-4s were fighters and bombers, but the heavier bombers were the A6s, just like the A4s were light attack. It kind of gets back to sortie generation, being able to put the number of aircraft airborne. And if you've got an aircraft that could do multi-missions, it's the squadron commander, the wing commander, and essentially the battle group commander have that many more options. If, that Hornet, it could go fly this mission, air to ground, or it could do this mission, it could tank, all these things. The flexibility, I think, is going to outweigh the question that you had about having each individual aircraft. Personally, I used to love going on the flight deck and seeing different types of aircraft. I just thought that was cool. I'll look at A7, A6. I was on when there was still A3s and even Vigilantes. They would fly on and fly out of a jet for recce only. But honestly, I think it is much more efficient and gives the battle group and the decision makers a few more options to have the multi-role aircraft. See, let me see if I can get this back, because I'm not going as fast enough. This is from Thomas Aldridge. Could a Tomcat still go toe-to-toe with a modern fighter? Sure. And you got to caveat what I said about, the quality of the box matters little. I mean, if you put a 9G aircraft with a brand new pilot in there, and who has a fundamental, understanding of how BFM works, he's still going to do okay. Now, you get somebody like Snort Snodgrass. I don't know if you've seen Tomcat Tales, but Snort Snodgrass tells a great story about how he took his older aircraft against this newer, at the time was a brand new F-18, which in theory it's a better dogfighter, and he smoked this. He beat him, and so yeah, I would say it could go to toe-to-toe. In all probability, it would not fare that well. But there's always the chance. See, David Smith, as a RIO, did you enjoy dogfights or intercepts more? Oh, let's see. He also goes, I imagine the first were exciting, but you had a bigger job role with the second. Were any kinds of intercepts that were particularly hard? Well, high-speed intercepts, they can get out of, the RIO's bread and butter was to make sure that the airplane got to where it needed to be to intercept. I mean, pilots got quite good at but out at range, essentially they were a kind of voice automated, by the RIO. Hey, let's come left, head a steady, 260, and you say Buster if you need to get more speed on there. So it was fun, but it was not as dynamic as the dogfight portion. And you think, well, yeah, you're only a few feet behind the pilot, so everything he's feeling in that dogfight, you're feeling. And I mean, the sensation of G, aircraft G, when you're pulling, 6.5 G's steady, and quite often if you're looking where he's looking, you're not doing your job because that's the beauty of the Tomcat. You got you got 4 eyeballs, right? 2 sets looking opposite directions, always looking behind you, which is probably why my back is so screwed up and my neck nowadays is because I spent a lot of my time as a RIO making sure our 6 was clear, and especially in a dogfight, always looking in a different piece of sky to make sure that we don't get nailed. And if we see somebody that is in danger of shooting, we would yell break right, and then call it. And I mean, I've saved the aircraft many times. And be honest, a lot of times with a junior pilot, again, even in the ACM arena, you'd have to do a little voice actuated piloting skills because if he's lost sight, he doesn't know exactly where he's going. You got to be very direct. You'd say roll left, stop, roll, pull, and that you're just trying to get the lift vector on the enemy aircraft so that he could know where to look. And you say 12 o'clock high. So I'd say that the dogfighting was a little bit more interesting aspect of those. That's a good question though. Let's see. Hang on a second. I think there we go. Let's see. Did you have from Mike Candela. Did you have a choice of coaster squadrons coming out of the RAG? Okay, the RAG, you were already on that coast. So when you get your wings, you, as in the Navy, you always get to give them your druthers, what you want. Doesn't mean you're going to get it. So you tell them, I wanted fighters, F-14s. So luckily I got them. I didn't know which coast I was going to go until the day I got my wings, and because they don't plan that one that far out. So luckily I got the coast. You do have a choice. You're not guaranteed. Okay, that's the bottom line. Now, that's when you go to the RAG. So I was at the West Coast RAG 124, the gunfighters, and you don't know which squadron you're going to go to because you're in the RAG for probably nine months to maybe even a year, depending on how long it takes you to get through. I was in about 9 months, and you don't know what squadron. Now, it's going to be based on the inter-deployment turnaround cycle of the various squadrons. So you rarely will finish your RAG and go, join a squadron at sea. It does happen. But usually you'll get to join a squadron that is either just coming back from a cruise or they're, just starting their cycle to get ready to go on cruise. And that way you get some time to get integrated into the squadron. So do you get a choice? Well, you used to go out and lobby. And so like when you're almost ready to finish up with the RAG, you would go to the squadrons that you were interested in and based on, reputation. And you go in and meet with the XO or PXO or even maybe the CO if he's still going to be there for a while and say, hey, I love the squadron. This is what I've always dreamed about being. Again, it's whether or not you get that squadron. Honestly, I didn't get the squadron I had lobbied for because unbeknownst to me, I was already detailed. I already had my orders to my first squadron when I was long before I was finished and when I was trying to politic to get into another squadron. So I ended up going to a squadron that I wasn't even on my list. Is what it is, right? Let's see. I don't want to skip this one. Maurice Goba, you skip question. What is the most interesting enigmatic Soviet-Russian type you have intercepted? Oh, that's easy. That's the bear because I haven't intercepted that many. So I've intercepted multiple bears, but they're all bears. I've never gotten a badger or a backfire. I think those would be super interesting. But the bear itself is very interesting. If you haven't seen one fly or been near one when it's flying, it's got this deep drone because these engines are big and they're turbo propellers, and it's very interesting. So that was it for me, the bear, and then you also can communicate with your Soviet counterparts because, like I said, they'll be the guy in the tail gunner. He's sitting there showing you stuff and making pictures. It's pretty funny. Timberwolf, which foreign air force was the best fun to hang with? Do you have any exchange stories on hijinks on the town? Perhaps other U.S. bases could be included. I don't because when the Navy obviously operates from the carrier, so where we pull into port is not typically where we operate. So you'll pull into port I mean, I've been all over, Singapore, Thailand, Hong Kong, Australia, but very rarely did we fight with any of their Air Force, either right before or right after. We did fight some Malaysian F-5s and some Thai from Thailand, but we never really got to meet up with anybody when we pulled into town, because honestly, the port, and it was like the love boat. We pulled in, every couple of weeks we were pulling into a great port. And my OEF, cruise, as you might imagine, didn't have any, and they actually forced us to go stop into France on the way home for a couple nights. But other than that, that was the only one. So let's see. Subrock 12. Weird question, laugh out loud. But in the Rio seat, was your right foot pedal the controller for the radio comm? Yes, and that's exactly right. There was two foot pedals in the back seat, and obviously the front seat was rudder. On the back seat, they had two little switches near the toes, and to talk, so you didn't have to do anything with your hands. You just hit that, and you're talking on the radio, UHF or VHF. On the left was ICS. Now, we rarely would use that. Most times there was another switch that you just throw your switch with your thumb, and that was because if you used your foot switch, it would blank out all the other comm. And believe it or not, when you got three different radios and intercom, sometimes people talk over each other. You want to be able to try to decipher what's going on. And in the F-14D, when you had Link 16, there was another couple of radios. So they could have four different radios going at the same time. And the way you manage that is you set different levels. Your primary one that you're talking on is be your highest level volume, and then down and to where you can manage and try to decipher who's talking based on the volume. So that's a good call though. Let's see. Hi Scar. This is from Andrew Lloyd. Hi Scar, have you had a chance to read the book Top Gun by Dan Yankee Peterson? Yes. That was required reading. When I went to Top Gun, that was kind of like the book everybody was supposed to have read or known. So yes, it's a great book. I'd highly recommend it. Freckle Puny, what is your favorite aviation movie? Whether it be naval, land-based, American, British, French, German. Okay, there are so many. I mentioned this on my original air crew with Mike a month or two ago, was that, and this is kind of what I think gets a lot of young folks interested in aviation, is seeing their stuff in the movies. There are two great movies, and I'm trying to figure which one I like better, but they're the Blue Max, which is a World War I movie, and that's an American movie. 633 Squadron was filmed in Britain. I think it's still a U.S. Movie. Had Cliff Robertson in it at 633 Squadron. But both of them, and I also like Battle of Britain. I mean, those are two classic. Modern day, let's see, is that aviation movie? Let's see, modern day. I'm trying to think aviation. Final Countdown is not even modern. Obviously, it's like 80s, so 1980, whatever it was, 86. That's a good one too, because the Tomcats look so badass when they're flying against the Japanese Zeros. So those are my favorites. There's some decent movies. I'm not a fan of CGI, and when I see, and that's why I think this Top Gun Maverick, I think it's going to be, whether it's probably going to be very cheesy script. I get it. It's going to be total cheese, if you want to call it that. But the flying scenes I've seen already are going to make it worth the price of admission, because everything flying, except for what I understand, there's a CGI Tomcat in it. So and I've seen that on the trailer. It doesn't look quite as real, but the flight scenes with the Super Hornet, man, you can't beat that. It looks really good. Bat 21, what do you think of the Su-27 and its variants, and the MiG-29 and its variants? Man, I'll tell you, those are some badass airplanes, and like I mentioned before, we tend to, the Soviets and now the Russians, basically they have the very much into power, okay, in a variety of ways, and they have the really high output engines, Su-27 and the MiG-20, and they're beautiful airplanes. They're not that great from an avionics standpoint. If you ever known anybody who's done any flights in those airplanes, again, the things that are going to differentiate the American fighting man aviator from these other enemies, Chinese or Russian, what have you, is our avionics and technology, and our training methods. And they're hurting on those on that end. But I love seeing these powerful fulcrums and flankers taken off, and the new variants. And you've seen them on the aircraft carrier too. They look good. I haven't really been keeping up with them. God, I saw one recently. I was like, man, I didn't know much about that airplane. I haven't really kept up with it. So, Raw Power 7. How real do you think the flying in the movie Hot Shots was? Honestly, I don't know if I saw that. I think that's one with Charlie Sheen, and it was a spoof on Top Gun. But I don't think I even saw it, to be honest. So I couldn't tell you. I don't know. Let's see. Josh Bayless. Hi, Scar. Tomcats forever. When the wings were transitioned, could you feel the wings moving by clunking or buffering? No. The only thing I know that the nose would have to be trimmed, just like when you lower your flaps, you could feel that, and the wings had a little more subtle. Basically, you couldn't really hear it. You could kind of just feel the airplane just shift its sort of center of gravity. You could feel that a little bit, but it's very smooth and quiet. Alexander Vatter, let's see, was Osmanar was the only customer with which the U.S. government agreed on selling the AUG-9 to. Interesting. Yeah, that if he's in fact from Iran, obviously they have the AUG-9 and the Tomcat. Let's see, Fruit Noodles. Could the Tomcat be fitted to carry the B-43 or B-61? Honestly, I don't even know what those are, so I'd have to research that, because I don't know what the B-43 or the B-61 is. Timberwolf, if you could fly any plane from history, what would it be? Oh man, that would be a tough one. I think if I had my druthers, it would probably be the Spitfire, in the Battle of Britain. When your whole country is on the line and it's in your own backyard, and you're getting bombed by the Nazis, and here you are in the coolest looking airplane, I don't want to say of all time, but it's definitely a front runner for coolest plane of all time, with Spitfire, and that would probably be it. I mean, I loved I love the Mosquito. And Hurricanes. The Brits had some really, really cool airplanes, especially in the World War II. Was Osman? I'm Malaysian, and we operate Su-30s with integrated Western avionics. What is a feature of the Russian aircraft that you think should be present in American fighter aircraft? Well, again, there's two aspects to this question. One is technology or avionics, and one is how we use that technology. And I think you really need both of those to come out on top in a heated engagement. So I don't know. I haven't seen or read much about these Su-30s that have Western avionics, but I got to believe that it would be a significant improvement over what the Russians had in there. I don't know what other features. Shoot, I haven't flown a fighter in 20. I think the last time was, well, I flew an F-15 as a guest of my Air Force friends in 2008. So it's been 14 years, but I haven't tactically flown in 20 years. So I don't even know if I'd be able to tell you what modern day cool things should be in the Su-30 with Western avionics. Let's see. Freckle Puny. The Bridges at Tokyo is a favorite aviation movie of mine, and one of mine as well. Classic Korean war. It is. That's because the aircraft are very cool and some great actors. William Holden and Grace Kelly. Doesn't get any better than that. That is one of my favorites too. I love that one, and it speaks to the naval aviation ethos. Where the old captain of the ship kind of looks off and says, "Where do they get such men?" In fact, if you catch my brother's latest, The Legends of Carrier Aviation, I think he starts with that clip, and it's very true to it's like, man, every day, every hour, clock, every hour on the clock, there's somebody, naval lady or guy out there, ready to go to war on an aircraft carrier, and so hopefully we won't run out of those good folks. Let's see, Vic Sani, can you talk about the airbags to seal the wings in the F-14? It's funny. That was one of those first things when you got on the F-14 and did your very first pre-flight. You kind of assume everything on an airplane is, metal, some form of metal, Grumman Iron Works. the airbags are not. It's like a fabric. And I thought, man, that's kind of weird. It's like being in a World War I kind of a covered fabric covered little portion. If you ever have done a model, but that part that covers it inflates and it deflates so that the wings have room to go in and out when they sweep. And so it's all pretty much automatic. And believe it or not, even though they are not metal, they stand up and they hold. They hold up. So there's really not much to say about them. There's no airbag switch. I mean, it's all part of the wing sweep system. And the only thing like I said that really comes out is the first time you see or touch it, it's like, oh, that's not even metal. That's like a fabric, and it's a fabric full of air. Let's see, David Smith. Without saying anything classified, what are some advantages of the APG-71 over the AUG-9? Okay, I think I mentioned this in my original interview about a month ago with Mike. Was that and I think I mistakenly called it the APG-65 because again, it'd been a while since I even thought about this stuff. But the 71 in the F-14D had medium PRF, which the AUG-9 did not. The AUG-9 had a high and a low PRF. The medium PRF gave it great capability to handle moving targets. So that was kind of probably the single biggest thing I thought about the AG-71 over the AUG-9. Alexander Vater, would the Tomcat have been a good FAC platform because the F-18D did the job? B-43 and 61 are tactics. Okay, so yeah, I never dropped nukes, so I couldn't the B-43, B-61. I didn't know anything about nukes because they never let me anywhere near a nuclear weapon. So back to the question. It not only would have meant it was a good FAC platform because we had FAC qualified personnel, and it was a great platform because it had a great loiter capability. It could stay airborne for quite a while. It had again two sets of eyeballs with gyro stabilized binoculars. The RIO would be able to do some really good work while the pilot obviously is flying around. So it was a great FAC platform. I'd say any platform that you can have two guys, two brains and four eyeballs, two of which can be different things. Like I said, usually the RIO would have his gyro stabilized goggles or binoculars that he'd be able to utilize, and they did some awesome work as a FAC-A.
So, Mike, I'm just going to jump in there quickly. We're going to wrap up in 5 minutes, guys. So maybe you want to pick the last few questions of your choice, and we'll wrap this brilliant Q&A up.
Sounds good, Mike. Timberwolf, is it true the Phoenix missile was attempted to be fitted to the F-15s, but they're too heavy or something? It seems like a waste of incredibly long-range platform. I think I don't know that that's true, and I would kind of doubt that it is, Timberwolf, because the AUG-9 it was like the A-54 was tied to the AUG-9, and the AUG-9 was never, as far as I know, was never even considered for the F-15. So it would have been very difficult to fire an AIM-54. Now maybe they try to figure out some way to have it talk to the radar in the F-15, but I personally have never heard of that one. And Andrew Arias Lloyd, Scar, what have you done since leaving the Navy? Well, I've done a lot of enjoyment of retirement, a lot of traveling. I've done a lot more of my music. I play in 5 bands. 2 are tribute acts. I think I sent Mike, and I don't remember if he might have put that in the last interview. I'm in a couple of tribute acts, a Guns N' Roses tribute act, and a AC/DC tribute act. So that's what I do for fun. Just music. I love music, and I love to travel and hang out. See, Muaz Osman, Western avionics brought significant improvements to Malaysia because it enabled our flank to drop pay weight. Yes, yeah. Any platform that could drop a GBU is a plus. Difference between A and B 23 and the TCS. I'm not real sure about that. I mean, we had TCS, and I don't think I could answer that question well enough to speak intelligently on that one. John Bayless, in your interview, you mentioned you had an RF Tornado exchange pilot. Was this common to have Tornado exchange pilots? Yes, we quite often we would have, because when he left, I think he was replaced by another Brit. So it was kind of a standing thing because it opened up a spot for an American exchange pilot to go to. So Clive Bayless, and I don't know if you're any relation, Josh, but Clive Bayless was the name of our exchange pilot from the UK when he was flying Tomcats. Fruit Noodles, if the worst came to worst and a salvo of kitchen missiles destroyed your carrier, would you have been ordered to do whilst in the air? That is a great question. I would have gone as close as I could to the nearest land, and if there wasn't any, I guess kiss our ass goodbye. And I mean, there are times where we've flown in scenarios that it's like, well, if by some tragic mistake we can't make it back, we are probably not going to live. And that one in a NORPAC, you're off the coast of Alaska, where your survival in the water, because it's so cold, even with the dry suit on, is minutes, 15 minutes, and you in all probability won't get rescued by the helicopter in 15 minutes. It might take a little bit longer depending how far away from the carrier. You're going to freeze to death. So that's a good question. I'd say my prayers and go as far as I could to the nearest land. Biggest challenge of being a CO? That's a great question, Waz. And I'll tell you what, there are a lot of folks that strive to be CO, and then when they finish, they're like, that wasn't that great. I enjoyed, that was the highlight of my career, was being a CO. And I'd say the biggest challenge is trying to keep a team of hundreds of people, because you have a few hundred maintainers, and you have a cadre of officers of 25, 30, trying to keep them all focused on the mission. And my single biggest goal was to always come home with the same number of people, not without replacing them, the same folks that I left with. And luckily, I never lost anybody in my 2.5 years as CO. And that was in the environment that we operate, that's something. Freckle Puny, do you think the RAF should have gotten the Tomcat over the Tornado? No, I'd say the Tornado did some awesome work, and I'd love to see some aircrew interview. I know he's had a couple, but I'd like to see even more of the Tornado guys. Let's see, Vic Siani, why was the AOA probe moved to the tip of the Radom F-14? That's a good question. I do not know. I couldn't tell you that. I know we still had one on the side. And with the one on the front, I used to feed the computer, so we still had one on the side. It's very small, pointy. Alexander Vater, awesome. Didn't know that. Thanks for the answers. Let's see, great interview. Thanks for that. Okay. Last, I expected this question. Puke and George, do you play or watch DCS? And I have done some watching. They sort of, it's almost like clickbait, because when I see a photo and I'm like, man, I go, that is such a good photo. How could that be? And it turns out to be a screenshot of a DCS, but they're so realistic. It's amazing. I have never played the game. I've seen a lot of shots on video, and it's like, man, that's as close as it gets to realism. I mean, it just looks so cool, and that'd be great. And why they couldn't incorporate that kind of stuff into a movie? Because again, the crap CGI that I see in movies makes you not want to watch it. But if it was the DCS quality, I don't think I'd have any problems at all.
Right, well, I think that's it, guys. So thank you very much for joining us tonight, everybody, and for the great questions. And yeah, Scar, that was brilliant. So thank you very much for joining us.
Appreciate the time, Mike.
Absolutely. And yeah, hopefully we're going to get you on in the future, because we're going to do a Super Hornet special, aren't we? I'm hoping to do that again with you sometime in the future.
Oh, excellent. Count me in.
Definitely. Well, okay, guys, thanks again, and I hope you enjoyed this one, and have a good evening. Thank you very much.